Mr. David Henderson, you will be followed by Hilda Buenrostro.
I'm not real sure how I'm managing to stand up here today. The events of the last few days have left so many LGBT people exhausted and spent. Homophobia and transphobia, no matter how it is couched, can become lethal. After all the distorted information spewed in this room the last few weeks, if school were in session this week, we'd have a nightmare on our hands. Thousands of our lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender students would fear walking down our halls because the tendency to incite distrust and fear has real consequences that extend far beyond our educational process. We cannot equip our children for real life if we deny them one in our schools. No matter how one tries to spin it, no amount of someone's discomfort and unfounded fears can ever justify denying other persons their basic human rights, including basic bodily functions. Dehumanizing people spawns hate speech with a predictable outcome. We must remain dignified in adversity, embrace inclusion over fear. We must love without qualification, acknowledging not just our existence, but our right to coexist on our own terms would be a very good start. When we get lazy about history, when we deny those lessons to our children, the consequences can sound like this. Stanley Almodovar III, 23. Amanda Alvear, 25. Oscar Aracena, 26. Rodolfo Ayala, 33. Omar Capo, 20. Simon Carrillo, 31. Luis Daniel Conde, 39. Corey James Connell, 21. Tevin Eugene Crosby, 25. Anthony Disla, 25. Dianca Drayton, 32. Leroy Fernandez, 25. Fernandez Mercedes Marisol Flores, 26. Peter Gonzalez Cruz, 22. Juan Ramon Guerrero, 22. Paul Terrell Henry, 41. Jason Benjamin Josephet, 19. Eddie Jamuldroy Justice, 30. Christopher Leonin, 32. Alejandro Barrios Martinez, 21. Akira Murray, 18. Geraldo Ortiz Jimenez, 25. Joel Rayon Panigua, 31. Jean Carlos Mendez Perez, 35. Enrique L. Rios, 25.
Thank you.
It certainly is time.
Thank you, sir. Hilda Buenrostro is next, and then we'll be followed. Good evening. I'm calling this meeting to order. The time is 5:30 p.m. In accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, this meeting is officially open with the quorum present. Ladies and gentlemen, today is Flag Day, a day set aside 100 years ago by President Woodrow Wilson and later approved by Congress to honor the adoption of our national banner. So let's stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
Amen.
At this point, Mr. Clint Bond from Communications will, well, I'm sorry. Yeah. The public meeting, we're moving on to number 3. The public hearing is called to order. Ms. Molinar, Dr. Washington, are you ready? Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon or good evening, President Ramos, board members, Superintendent Dr. Scribner. This evening, we'd like to discuss the public hearing requirements for our turnaround plans, specifically House Bill 1842. House Bill 1842 is designed to address schools that have had 2 consecutive years of academic unacceptable ratings. Specifically, we will discuss what the Texas Education Code states for 39.107. TEC 39.107 addresses campuses rated IR2, IR3, and IR4 or above. What the TEC states is that campuses will be assigned a campus intervention team, a professional service provider, which is provided by the state, and a DCSI, which is your district coordinator of school improvement, which is currently serving as the director of each campus. TEC 39.107 states that each campus that is in IR2 or above will create a turnaround plan, have the Board of Trustees and the Commissioner approve the turnaround plans, and then submit quarterly progress reports to TEA. Currently, there are 11 schools of our 143 campuses that are in turnaround. There are 8 elementary campuses and 3 secondary campuses.
I'm going to review the timeline of the campus turnaround plans. The process actually to create the turnaround plans began in January as TEA released a template that accompanied 3 webinars and 1 face-to-face training at Region 11 Service Center that all of our turnaround principals, our PSPs, our leadership directors, Mrs. Washington, Mrs. Breed, Mrs. Ballandron, and myself all attended. After the face-to-face training, you'll see in February, campuses began the collaboration process on campus with their faculty, parents, SBDM committee, and community stakeholders. TA has provided support to the principals through feedback throughout the process on their plans, in addition to offering resources through webinars and face-to-face training. The feedback was very specific to our individual plans. In April, as some of you attended, our district board members were asked to represent our turnaround campuses to meet with the principals in the leadership department to share and provide feedback on the campus turnaround plans. The meetings provided open dialogue between our board members, campus administration, as well as our leadership team. In addition to the individual campus community meetings, you'll see on the timeline highlighted in green during February 29th and April 11th, we posted the turnaround plans on our district website for public feedback and comments. The comments and feedback were shared with the campuses and leadership directors to review. TEA requires us to submit all feedback from community meetings as well as our feedback from tonight's board meeting. And we will be submitting the final plans this Friday, June 17th. If a turnaround campus meets standard in August, the District Board of Trustees will have the option to continue the implementation of our turnaround plans. We can, at that time, decide if we want to modify the plans or discontinue the implementation of the turnaround plans altogether. If the turnaround campus does not meet standard, our final plans are submitted to TEA as well, and when the final rating is announced, TEA has the option to assign alternative leadership of the campus, close the campus, or reorganize the governance structure. That's why we've been very strategic with the revisions to the plans from the feedback we've received twice from TEA on specific campus plans. The transition chart that you'll see shows the progression of an improvement required campus according to House Bill 1842. The far left column titled 2015-2016 school year identifies the vertical progression for campuses in IR 1 through 6 status according to the state. The far right column in yellow identifies the current IR ratings for our 11 turnaround campuses.
So specifically, you have heard that the campus principals, the directors, the leadership chiefs have had extensive training in the TASE process, which is the Texas Accountability Intervention System. So now we look at what our district turnaround committee and stakeholders, what we hold ourselves accountable for. And specifically, we will review the TASE submissions from each campuses after they have we have gathered input from our principals, our PSPs, our directors, our board members. We will provide ongoing learning and support to teachers and administrators specific to the data trends that are collected. We will collaborate ongoing with these all stakeholders monthly to ensure that we keep the same focus and alignment, and really to progress monitor the intervention, the plans and the interventions and the resources. We want to make sure that those resources are effective. So that's part of the process of the turnaround committee. And just a little bit more of how the TASE process worked. It shows you in that next slide the district commitments, and with those commitments that we provide the supports, and those supports touch each of the 7 critical success factors: academic performance, the use of data, quality instruction, leadership effectiveness, teacher quality, several items there. And it goes on to the inner monitoring process of collecting data, the needs assessment for each campus, the improvement plans that are continuously monitored, and then the implementation of each plan. That ends our presentation. We'll take questions.
Anyone want to make comments regarding the campus improvement plan or questions? Okay. Dr. Sutherland?
I just say thank you. I know there's got to be a ton of work in there, and there'll be another ton or two getting them implemented. So we appreciate your obeying the law and getting things done on time.
Dr. Sutherland, if I could recognize our 11 principals from our turnaround campuses, ask them to stand at this time. The work is really done at the campus level in collaboration with our leadership team, but they have joined us tonight, so if they could stand to be recognized. And our leadership team has attended to, because they collaborate with our principals on a daily basis with those plans.
Yes.
Okay. Public comment, Mr. Alston? And we'll just FYI, we'll be observing the 3-minute rule as well.
Question to Ms. Washington and the team: why did y'all skip over 103 and 106 in subchapter 39. Y'all also supposed to give us an explanation why these schools are in the academic performance when they have been in the red over 2 years, and we need to get a better plan. I didn't hear any. Well, this is how it's laid out. The schools are considered at risk. I don't see any plan where you include the parents and part of the process to get these schools up, because we've been in the red a little bit too long. Okay, you took 107, which is good, but what about 103 to 106? Why wasn't that implemented off in this particular plan?
So this is public comment, and I'll let you visit with her
Okay.
afterwards to answer your question directly. Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. This public hearing is now closed. Regular meeting is now called to order. From Communications will now assist with the recognitions.
Thank you, Mr. Ramos. Members of the board, Dr. Scribner, even though school has concluded, the athletics department wanted to make sure we recognize some additional student athletes who recently participated in the state track and field meet in Austin. Alexandra Burns, would you please stand? Alexandra is now a graduate of Pascal High School, and she is the state silver medalist in the girls' 800-meter run. Alexandra's time of 2 minutes, 10.46 seconds is the fastest ever by a Fort Worth ISD female student athlete, and the best finish since two-time silver medalist Katrine Lee from O.D. Wyatt in 1992. Alexandra's time was almost 4 seconds faster. She will attend University of Arkansas, where she will be a walk-on to the women's track team. And Alexandra, do you have any family members with you tonight? If so, would they please stand so we can recognize them? And the Pascal coaches are Thomas Ryan and Craig Harden, and the principal is Dr. Terry Mossage. Brandon Reesner, would you please stand? Brandon just completed his junior year at Southwest High School. He is the state silver medalist in the boys' 800-meter run. Brandon's time of 1 minute 53.17 was the fastest 800 meters and the best finish at state for a Fort Worth ISD student athlete since Trimble Tech's Cadavius Robinson in 1994. KD ran 1 minute 53.4 seconds, went on to TCU and winning an NCAA championship. He was also a two-time Olympian. Brandon also plays football and is being recruited by several Division I universities as a receiver. And Brandon, if your family members or guests would stand, we could recognize them too. Coach is Ned Smith, and the principal at Southwest is John Engel. Keyshawn Everly, would you please stand? Keyshawn has just completed his sophomore year at Trimble Tech. He is the state bronze medalist in the boys' 100-meter dash with a time of 10.54 seconds. All right. And Keyshawn will be active on the summer track circuit. And Keyshawn, if your family members or guests would stand, we can recognize them. Keyshawn is coached by Clayton Brookins, himself a Trimble Tech graduate and former high school track standout. Coach Brookins also played football at TCU. The principal at Trimble Tech is Omar Ramos, and the executive director of our athletics is Kevin Green, who I think is rushing back from Austin still. There he is. He made it. Okay.
That concludes our scheduled recognitions. At this time, do any of our board members or superintendent have any recognitions to bring forward? Oh, sorry. Oh, yep, sorry, my apologies. I'd like to invite Dr. Mary Patton, Dean of TCU College of Education, to step to the microphone. Dr. Patton and her team have a special presentation to give one of Dr. Scribner's leadership team members. My apologies.
No problem. Good evening. I'm Mary Patton, and I'm here tonight with two colleagues from the Ed Leadership Program at TCU, Dr. Marla McGee and Dr. JoBeth Jimerson, and they have an award to present tonight.
Well, thank you for allowing us a place on your agenda today, and we bring you greetings from the TCU College of Education. We also thank each and every one of you for the time and energy you devote to serving children of Fort Worth ISD. As you're aware, Fort Worth of ISD is one of two partnering districts in the TCU Principal Fellows Program. We just admitted our fourth cohort of leaders, and our third cohort of leaders is going to be working in their respective districts as principal interns over the coming academic year. We are absolutely thrilled with the quality of teachers that are stepping into formal leadership, and we have high hopes for the future of our schools when these people are coming and saying we want to help lead for children. But this work could not have been possible without the ongoing support and partnership of Fort Worth ISD and in particular of Dr. Michael Sorum. So we come before you today to present him with the University Council for Educational Administration's Excellence in Educational Leadership Award. The Leadership Award was established to provide national recognition to practicing school administrators who have made significant contributions to administrator preparation. Dr. Sorum, since the beginning of the program, has been an integral part of launching the Principal Fellows. He meets with us to strengthen the program. He gives us feedback on student progress and helps us know what kind of problems that our summer research courses might be focused on. He plans and engages in the recruitment, identification, and assessment process, and he works to ensure the placement of our principal interns with master principals, which we know is so very important to supporting the chain and pipeline of leadership in our communities. So Dr. Sorum, for all you have done and continue to do, we'd like to present you with this award and this certificate and say thank you for playing such an important role in developing the future leaders of our schools. Picture. I know. We wore it for you.
Congratulations, Dr. Sorum. Board members, superintendent recognitions or comments. First up is Dr. T.A. Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Ramos. First of all, I'd like to say congratulations to all of our student athletes who were recognized tonight. And then I'd like to recognize some of our community workers. First of all, I'd like to recognize Mr. John Proctor. Sunshine, would you assist me with this? Mr. Proctor is the president of the Regional Black Contractors Association. Would you come down, Mr. Proctor?
There she is.
Thank you. My seats.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Of time, would you like for me to read this for Mr. Proctor from you? Oh, yeah, go ahead. So, Mr. Proctor, for all you do, the Sunshine Network would like to present you with the Fort Worth ISD Shining Star Award, and we would like to honor you in recognition and grateful appreciation for your generosity and exceptional commitment to the betterment of our city and our schools on behalf of Board Trustee District 4, Dr. T.A. Sims, Sr.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you so much.
There you go.
Then next, I'd like to recognize the Levita News. I met Mr. Ted Pruitt about 50 years ago. The son was playing basketball during that time. Many of you all are too young to remember that. All you hard workers with Levita today. But when Mr. Pruitt started the Levita 58 years ago, he came to Fort Worth and was working with Jerry Thomas. That's history. Any of you all know that? Okay. But anyway, the Levita News has 58 years of telling the story about what we do in our community here. And I wanted to recognize you, this being the 19th of June coming up. I thought this would be a good time to do that. You want to read that one?
I will do that. Okay. So first of all, this is to Miss Sandy Joyce, editor and journalist, the Levita News, the Black Voice, in recognition and grateful appreciation for your years of outstanding service and devotion to ensure that our stories are told and our voices are heard. Thank you so much, Miss Sandy Joyce. And she is an I Am Turl alumni, a very proud one, and she's going to make sure. I heard Miss Toby Jackson is going to learn that the school song. Right. So we want to get the picture with her, and I'll, okay. Okay. This next service award, Shining Star Award, honors Mr. Arthur Antwine, photojournalist, the Levita News, the Black Voice, and it simply reads the same. In recognition and grateful appreciation for your years of outstanding service and devotion to ensure that our stories are told and our voices are heard, on behalf of Dr. T.A. Sims, District 4 trustee, Mr. Arthur Antwine, we honor you tonight. Thank you. This is yours. Okay. It's all on you, Dr. Sims.
This award here is for someone who always makes me feel better. Normally, when I call this person, she always asks me, "What's on your mind, Dr. Sims?" And when I'm calling, I'm not always as pleasant as I always want to be, but she always picks me up. And this award is going to the Executive Secretary of the Fort Worth ISD School Board, Mrs. Faye Daniels. I'd like to present this to you. And I'd just like to say thank you to the board for allowing me to make these presentations to my community. And it's my understanding that you have something that you'd like to say tonight.
I do. And if you would just hold up 1 minute, I know you didn't know this was coming because you were planning a lot of other things. But if you would give me an opportunity to present you on behalf of the Sunshine Network and the community, the Trailblazers Award, honoring Dr. Theophilus A. Sims Sr., 33 years of service. In her absence, Christine Chadwick Moss, 26 years of service. Commemorating a combined 59 years of dedicated service in the struggle for equality and justice. Thank you for paving the way for every school board trustee to serve as president on the Fort Worth ISD board. June 14th, 2016.
You too. Thank you.
And Ms. Moss does have one in her absence, and we will make sure that she gets it. Also, in his absence, he is not here tonight. But we also have a Trailblazers Award for the Honorable Glenn Oliver Lewis, former Texas State Representative, House District 95, commemorating the intricate role that he has played as former State Representative HD 95, assisting trustees Dr. T.A. Sims and Christine C. Moss in the struggle for equality and justice. We'd like to thank him as well for paving the way for every school board trustee to serve as president on the Fort Worth Independent School District, and we will make sure that he gets it. I did speak with him, and he gave me his permission to accept on his behalf. And we have two more. The Shining Star Award, we would like to honor Ms. Jean McClung, former trustee of the Fort Worth ISD District 2, in recognition and grateful appreciation for her generosity and exceptional commitment to the betterment of our city and our schools. She also was the 5th member to ensure that we have a 9-0, and we want to acknowledge her for that. And last, but certainly not least, always to my sister from another mister, the Shining Star Award honoring Ms. Toby Jackson, our trustee for the Fort Worth Independent School District 2, in recognition and grateful appreciation for your generosity and exceptional commitment to the betterment of our city and our schools. We love you for your support and for the backbone to stand what's right when others don't think so. I love you anyway. I love you. And thank you, Mr. President, Dr. Schroeder, for allowing us this opportunity to just say thank you to each of our board members for all you do. We really greatly appreciate you, and we look forward to presenting you in the future some Trailblazers Awards. On behalf of the Sunshine Network, I am Lady Sunshine always. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Next up, we have Dr. Sutherland.
Thank you, President Ramos. I have two comments this evening. First one is I want to compliment all our high school principals, especially mine, and their staffs for the truly outstanding work they've done over the last year in preparing our high school seniors for graduation as well as college. Each of the last 3 years, the number of dollars of college scholarship has earned by our students has continued to grow. Both South Hills and Southwest graduates earned record dollars of scholarships, and I am sure this pattern continues throughout the district. I don't know if I should try to give numbers here. It was $3.5 million for South Hill West, and South Hills, which is about twice as big, $6.2 million. This is a lot of money for kids to go to college, and it didn't happen by accident. It happened by a lot of work by the AVID people. I don't know if you can tell I'm wearing my AVID T-shirt, but anyway, this is a real achievement, and I think we need to honor them. My other comment will be brief at this point in time. I am very discouraged about the progress being made on this transgender amendment to our board policy. I do not think it has been handled carefully. I hope that when it's brought back to the board that there will be a vote. I expect there to be a vote on it by board members, and I hope it will happen. I would like to have it happen by the June 28th meeting, but certainly no later than July 17th. Thank you.
Mrs. Moss and Mrs. Paz could not be here tonight. They both asked me to relay their message. Mrs. Moss is at legislative update with NSBA, and Trustee Paz is out of the country with her MBA program. Dr. Scribner, last speaker.
Thank you very much. President Ramos, members of the board, I am pleased to report that we have learned a great deal during the last few weeks in the community forums regarding our anti-discrimination policy and transgender guidelines. I am encouraged and thankful to have heard so many people in our city who were interested in contributing their suggestions to the improvement, revision, and reissuance of these administrative regulations for the 16-17 school year. The sessions, many of you here were in attendance at these forums. The sessions were productive, they were respectful and informative, and I believe they will assist us in clarifying the truth and improving service to our students. Look forward to establishing a representative committee to assist us in this endeavor. Earlier this month, we had a wonderful celebration, several wonderful celebrations across our district as members of the board and administration celebrated with our schools. And as Dr. Sutherland mentioned, along with our schools and faculty and staff, we graduated almost 4,000 seniors who earned a cumulative $48 million in merit scholarship, which is an increase of $13 million as compared to last year. So that trend is heading in the right direction, and we're very, very proud of our seniors who are off to success in college, career, and community leadership. At the state level, late Friday afternoon, Commissioner Morath canceled the June administration of the 5th and 8th grade STAR tests and removed the STAR as a requirement for promotion from these grades due to problems with data assessment. And while there may be some folks who choose to withdraw, some parents rather, who choose to withdraw their 5th and 8th grade students from summer school due to the cancellation of the STAR June retest, we believe that students would still benefit from the additional instruction and therefore will continue to offer summer school as planned while respecting the choice of parents regarding their child's attendance in summer classes. Also related to the assessment, the STAR testing, yesterday, in fact, the TEA, Texas Education Agency, informed us that we will not receive STAR results this week as scheduled for our students in grades 3 through 8 due to continued issues and concerns with the testing vendor in New Jersey, the ETS. Results now are scheduled to be released on July the 5th, 2016. And finally, JROTC, Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, was recently held a wonderful event where Fort Worth ISD and other North Texas school districts spent the first week of summer vacation at Junior Cadet Leadership Camp. It's a 5-day camp, and it provides a safe and healthy and fun training environment that was both physically and mentally challenging for the cadets, our students. The cadets were supported by our own culinary arts students from Fort Worth ISD's Gold Seal schools and programs of choice. And I was able to get out there and visit and spend the morning talking and watching our cadets in action on the ropes of confidence course that includes a zip line that's several hundred yards long and many stories high, and it was quite an impressive afternoon. JROTC really remains one of our premier programs that is very tightly aligned with our mission of preparing all students for success in college, career, and community leadership. So that concludes my report. Thank you, President Ramos and members of the board.
Thank you, Dr. Scribner. We will now take a short recess so that our guests may have the opportunity to leave if they so choose. We will now begin public comment at this time. We will hear public comment. Let me remind you that because of the restrictions by the Texas Open Meetings Act, board members may not engage in a verbal exchange about a subject that has not been posted. We will listen and take notes, but the board is prohibited from responding to any inquiries made during a board meeting on any topic not posted on the agenda. However, the board may reply with 1, a statement of specific factual information given in response to the inquiry, 2, recitation of existing policy in response to the inquiry, or 3, direct the person to visit with staff about the issue. While the board listens to concerns of a general nature and issues of common and individual concern, the board will not hear complaints about specific individual employees or public officers during the public comment session. Speakers shall refrain from mentioning names of individual employees or public officers during their comments. Any employee, parent, or other member of the public is asked to comply with the appropriate grievance policy to have a complaint heard pursuant to the applicable board policy. In accordance with Board Policy BED Local, speakers shall have a 3-minute time limit, and I ask that you please observe this rule. Furthermore, a speaker may not relinquish his or her time to another speaker. Delegations of 5 or more persons shall appoint 1 person to present their views before the board with the time not to exceed 5 minutes. We will continue with the 60-minute time limit for our overall hearing, and just so that we make sure we capture your information correctly, we will ask if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address as you speak. First speaker tonight is Ms. Veronica Villegas. Second speaker will be Amanda Cole, so Amanda may near another microphone. I'm sorry, Amanda Coleman. My apologies.
Good evening, Superintendent, members of the board. My name is Veronica Villegas. I reside at 1330 6th Avenue, and I have 3 children. I now have 2 children in the Fort Worth ISD School District. I just graduated one from Baskell.
All right.
Good. Thank you. First, I want to thank the board for providing an opportunity for the public to comment on the transgender bathroom policy. I did not attend any of the forums because I believe this policy to be legally sound and, quite frankly, just simply the right thing to do. I also want to caution the board that the forums are not a good way to measure support or lack thereof for an issue or a policy, and that fundamentally the transgender bathroom policy is a civil rights issue with federal purvey that is not something that we at the local level should be should be deciding whether or not we're going to follow federal law. Having said that, however, the administrative regulations that I guess that are the rules of how that policy is implemented, I think are worth taking a look at. And I think this forum has provided some great insight from both sides on some possible revisions and review of those administrative regulations. And again, I do want to make that distinction between the policy and the administrative regulations. I also want to urge trustees to continue to be the public servants that they are, and to continue to make decisions that are in the best interest of our students, regardless of whether or not those decisions may be popular with their constituents. On another unrelated note, there is a consent agenda item this evening. I think it's item number I, which is the approval of the restoration of the windows at Lily B. Clayton. And I wanted to thank the board because it was just about a year ago that a few of us came to the board with some concerns about the replacement of those very historic windows at a school that does have a historic designation through the city. It's been, like I said, almost a year, but the end result, I think, is one that both the school, the PTA, the parents, and the community are very pleased with. Those windows, as I understand it, will be restored. And so, again, I want to thank the board for taking a minute to listen to the community and to research to see what to look into the issues that we brought forth, and then to finally bring a resolution that is positive for both the community and the school district. Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda Coleman will be next. After Amanda will be Christy Bundy.
My name is Amanda Coleman, and I live at 1009 Oak Forest Drive. During the last week of school, while handing out transgender guideline information to fellow parents at school pickup, I was publicly called out and humiliated by a Fort Worth ISD board member and fellow Daggett Montessori mom. During our unpleasant conversation, she challenged me with something I want to challenge every person in this room. Don't rely upon anyone else for your information. Spend 30 minutes and read the 8-page guidelines yourself with logic instead of emotion before deciding what you believe. I did and was shocked at what I read. This goes way beyond a bathroom issue. This encroaches upon parental and female athletic rights, to name a few. After reading this, I was left with more questions than I had before. It says on page 6 that the single-user restroom must not be given as the only option for transgender students who need or desire increased privacy. My question is, why? What other option do you have in mind? How do you plan to pay for all of this? Number 2. It is my understanding that any student, transgender or non, who's uncomfortable using their designated bathroom has had access to safe, single-stall facilities such as is provided in the nurse's office. What is wrong with this option? If this has worked for the last 5 to 6 years, does there really need to be a change? It feels like you're creating a problem where none existed. Number 3, page 5 to 6 states in summary that a school and student can choose to make gender transitions and other accommodations without the parent knowing. Ashley explained the reason is many of these students have abusive parents who will explode at their big news. But isn't there already a system in place to protect a student from dangerous parents? Aren't DHS and an experienced professional counselor better equipped than you to walk a student safely through this process? Why would you unnecessarily put that liability upon yourself? Number 4, the guidelines allow a boy to compete in girls' sports. How will this ultimately affect female athletics and their ability to earn college scholarships? A boy just placed 3rd in a female Alaska state track meet, taking a spot a girl should have held. Where does this stop? Number 5, what exactly constitutes a transgender student? Can you make it more clear and specific, such as one who has officially changed their gender on their birth certificate or made an official transition? These guidelines have done nothing more than put the limelight on students who just want to sink into the shadows and cause divisions between parents who really just want what's best for their kids. It has caused hysteria and division where there wasn't any before. I ask you to please repeal these guidelines and allow our voices to be a part of the solution. I heard you are appointing an advisory committee to clarify the guidelines. I ask you to please appoint people from both sides.
Thank you. Christy Bundy. After Christy will be Kathy Burrell. Is Christy here? Okay. So Kathy Burrell.
To the honorable representatives and concerned citizens of Fort Worth, it has become apparent to me during this ongoing process involving the controversial and agenda-driven transgender guidelines that attempting to reason with human-based logic is futile. Therefore, I have chosen to eliminate my opinion and to focus on the truth, which is the infallible, immutable, eternal wisdom of our Creator God. Now, you may choose to ignore and even deny this truth, but Romans 3:3-4 states, "For what if some did not believe? Shall their unbelief make the faith of God without effect? God forbid. Yea, let God be true, but every man a liar." The transgender representatives speak an untruth and do that community an injustice when they say that sexual disorientation cannot be eradicated. This is because they do not comprehend the power of God and deny his ability to heal and restore whatever has been wounded, bruised, and broken. This was Jesus' mission, and he accomplished it on the cross. He says in Isaiah 61, 1-2, "The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good tidings to the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound." Isaiah 53, 4-5 declares, "Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed." God offers a way to true freedom and liberty. Romans 3:23 states, "For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God." Romans 6:23 goes on to say, "For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord." Finally, Romans 10:13 makes this promise, that whosoever calls upon the name of the Lord shall be saved, and we are all whosoevers. If you want this wonderful freedom from sin, just repeat with belief in your heart after me. Say, "Dear Lord Jesus, come into my heart. Forgive me of my sin. I forgive those who have sinned against me. I believe you died on the cross for me. I believe you rose from the grave, and that you're coming back again for me. Heal my broken heart. Deliver me through your power." 5 seconds. "From whatever holds me in bondage, I surrender my will to yours."
Time. Thank you. Philip Koo is next. After Philip Koo will be Brandon Burrell. So Philip Koo.
Greetings. Let me begin by thanking you all for your contributions to the Fort Worth School District Board, as well as those in leadership, and giving me the opportunity to speak as a citizen. And truly appreciate all you do and will do in the future for children and students in public schools. I'm a faithful father of 3 wonderful children and a faithful husband. My parents were immigrants from China, and I had the privilege and honor of growing up as a first-generation Chinese American. So I am a minority. I also serve as a community member to the city of Fort Worth and Tarrant County. And it is in that where I would like to lend my voice on requesting a repeal to the transgendered policy handed down from the Obama administration and enacted by the superintendent. The administration's policy, as well as the superintendent, does not reflect my own. Let me first say that I do not hold any malice towards the transgendered community. I respect their choice, however abstract it may be, to be either male, female, or both. However, my children who are not gender confused, and countless of others in the majority, should not be subjected to peer, government, or school administration pressure. And as a concerned parent, I should have the right and responsibility to protect my child's physical privacy. This policy gives unnecessary pressure and power to the board and its leaders that supersede any guidelines that I have instituted at home. Parents must be able to speak on this prior to reaching any more decisions. In trying to assist and make transgenders comfortable at public schools, you have alienated the others who consciously and decisively do not have any of these issues. Most have acknowledged their biological gender as the way they were born. So I offer a few suggestions. First, continue to do stuff like this, to set aside time for parent-to-school board meetings with y'all. Allow the many parents who do not agree to have a voice. Protecting parents' rights and child security, identity, and privacy should be your most urgent issue. Second, provide creative alternatives. The Obama administration and guidelines simply allow boys to use girls' restrooms and vice versa if they so choose and identify with that gender. So why not just build a unisex restroom for those who classify as such? Again, as long as we parents are in agreement with school policies, alternatives will and can work. Third, identify the real issue, and quite possibly could be bullying. Changing policies and allowing genders to use any bathroom will only exacerbate the problem. As parents, teachers, and lawmakers, we hold the power to guide children, both male and female, to find their identity and to live moral lives.
Thank you.
Let's equip and educate them, not fold to societal pressures.
Brandon Burrell. After Brandon will be Elena Hesed.
I came to lift up Jesus high. Jesus came to set the captives free. He came for everyone in this room. He came for everyone in the world. He came to turn all of us into something we could never become on our own. Children of God. He offers the true transformation we all seek. The Gospel of John, chapter 3, verse 3. Jesus answered and said unto him, Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. The Gospel of John, chapter 8, verse 12. Then spake Jesus again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. The Apostle Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 8, verse 1. There is now, therefore, no condemnation to them which are in Christ Jesus, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. The Apostle Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service, and be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. The Apostle Paul's letter to the Galatians, chapter 2, verse 20. I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. The Apostle Paul's letter to the Ephesians, chapter 5, verse 14. Wherefore he saith, Awake thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light. Hebrews 4:7. Again, he limiteth a certain day, saying in David, Today, after so long a time, as it is said, Today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts. The only people who ever got anything from Jesus were the people who acknowledged they needed him. They had to admit things were not as they should be. Nicodemus was a Pharisee. He came to Jesus at night. He needed answers. Peter, the disciple, cried out to Jesus when he began to sink. He couldn't walk on water on his own. Sinners, estranged from their heavenly Father, thronged Jesus, believing that he would accomplish the impossible. Heal their bodies, heal their broken hearts, cast out their unclean spirits, and restore their minds. He offers true transformation, one that this world could never give if we receive his Spirit in us, if we admit we need him. He was crucified and punished for the sin of the whole world, and 3 days later he rose again to life so that each of us could live through him a new life. I'm a witness. That means I've seen it happen.
Next is Elena Hesed. After Elena will be Steve Lord.
Hello. This is my comment on transgender policy. Though defined as a being fair to all students by the superintendent as a reason for the policy, we know that the opinion of all the students were not even consulted nor considered. This makes the statement of fairness not only greatly exaggerated, but clearly untrue. Through the multitudes of emails, speeches, and other communication now on behalf of non-transgender student population, which is, according to records I contacted, is about $86,000, or excuse me, 1,000 students. The thousands already have spoken against this policy, which clearly indicates that thousands do not feel that this is fair to them at all. It is a problem if transgender students state feeling unsafe or even harassed when using the restrooms corresponding to their biological gender. We are not against transgender students, nor we are against their rights to use the restroom. We cannot solve one problem, however, with creating another problem and a greater one. We cannot ignore the voice and the safety of nearly 86,000 students who do not have transgender issues, who do not have problems with using the bathrooms and lockers corresponding to their biological sex, and who also do not wish to share those with the persons of the opposite biological sex. Why then their safety, their dignity, and their privacy is excluded from the consideration of fairness to all? It is not possible to monitor who enters or what happens in the restrooms under such policy, which means that our children are to be exposed to sexual predators, gender confusion, sexual promiscuity, and have their privacy severely violated. Thus, it is not a safety alternative or a fairness to all solution. We will not institutionalize our children. No school, no teacher, board, or any other institution or person will take place of parents or family in the lives of their children. Parents are the only ones in their rightful position to make the decisions on any issues that concern their children. The school board are the elected officials, authorized only to represent the will and the view of the voters, not their own. We, the people, the voters, the taxpayers, the parents, must be informed, consulted, and heard. And by now, there are thousands who voiced their definite stand against this dangerous and harmful policy, speaking for its immediate repeal. I, too, call 5 seconds for the immediate repeal
Ma'am,
of
you're
the
dipping
transgender...
into other people's time. We appreciate you, though. Thank you. Next, we have Lord. After Steve Lord will be Julia Keys.
Yeah, I'm Steve Lord. I live at 4500 West Ridge. I'm a 1965 graduate of Arlington Heights High School, and I have two sons who were graduates of Paschal, 2000 and 2002. I'm very concerned about the city of Fort Worth and our school district. I have 3 points to make. The first one is, why are we discussing all this in the first place? Why did the board revise the non-discrimination policy of 2011 to include gender identity as a protected class? Dr. Robert George, McCormick Professor of Jurisprudence, Princeton, questions the science behind the transgendered movement and the current Washington administration's desire to mandate accommodation of gender-confused youths. The American College of Pediatricians argues forcefully against encouraging young people to question their own biological sexuality. These pediatricians consider such questioning a recognized mental disorder known in textbooks as gender dysphoria. Is it not madness to recognize these people as a protected class? Regarding the Fort Worth ISD task force, which is being implemented to address this issue, it is important that the task force be transparent and representative of the variety of opinions held. I'm eager to know how the composition of the task force is determined, how its findings will be reported, and when the findings are due. I'm also eager to see what this task force can reveal that speakers at these board meetings and school forums have not already brought forward. Ideally, a thoughtful response now would be to repeal the guidelines and then go back to the initial question of why revise them at all. Point 2. At what point would the board consider rejecting all federal funds? How much local autonomy must be forfeited before a vote can be taken to decline all further funding from the federal government? Other Texas districts have never taken federal money because of this very issue of compromising local autonomy and preferring to take direction from their local constituents. And then what is the likelihood that the policy revision might invite situations in which the Fort Worth ISD could suffer litigation in the event of an untoward event? Of course, individual board members would be assumed to have official immunity, but where is the law on this? And I would like to close by thanking everybody on the school board for the time they have given voluntarily to serve the community. It's very impressive, and everybody, I emailed everybody on the board, and the response was great. So you have my great admiration for that. Okay.
Thank you. Julia Keys. After Julia will be Conan Pinkston.
As a Fort Worth ISD taxpayer and mother of 5 children, I made plans to speak at the forum hosted 2 weeks ago at Pauley High School by the District 2 trustee. My husband and I agree with the district's emphasis on training children for community leadership, thus I brought my children with me so they could learn about civic participation. Unfortunately, I was appalled when the District 2 trustee invited to the stage a UNT Health Science Center professor to lecture the crowd for 30 minutes in great detail about sexual anatomical workings. We had to take our children out to shield them from the graphic nature of her talk. While she was presented as a, quote, impartial expert, quite clearly she was not, as evidenced by the fact that she spoke in support of the transgender guidelines at the last board meeting. She wasted 30 minutes of time that was advertised as public comment. Advertising something as a public forum for public input only to bait and switch those people into hearing a sexually obscene propaganda lecture is not only a violation of the public trust, it's also a violation of my children's innocence. Superintendent Scribner, why did you allow this to happen? District resources and the district's platform were used to cause further division. Speaking of using district resources, I want to know how many Fort Worth ISD taxpayer dollars were spent this weekend when the board president and District 3 trustee were wining and dining in Washington, D.C. at the National School Board Association Equity Conference. Down here in Fort Worth, we're in the middle of a public outcry and debate over the transgender policy, and these board members spent thousands of taxpayer dollars to travel to tweet out pictures and quotes of transgender activists like the director of GLSEN who said, quote, support for transgender students has to be active, not just passive. This is especially appalling because the 2 public forums in which opposition to the transgender policy was the loudest was at Northside, hosted by the board president, and Dunbar, hosted by the District 3 trustee. Enough with the jeers. Here's a cheers. I applaud the District 6 trustee for her courage and common sense in listening to her constituents. While we may not agree on everything, she is listening, and I appreciate that. Finally, Superintendent Scribner, the only way to heal the divide you have created in our city is to repeal the policy. Start the conversation with parents and taxpayers that never occurred and put any policy to a board vote. As I mentioned, I'm the mom of 5 kids, so I've changed a few diapers in my time. And one thing I've learned, when your kid makes a mess in his or her pants, and notice I did say his or her, you can't just wipe out the mess. You have to start over with a brand new diaper. And that is why you must repeal the guidelines. It's time for a clean pair of britches. It's time to repeal the policy.
Next we have Conan Pinkston. After Conan will be Jose Castillo.
Well, it's going to be pretty hard for me to follow that, but good evening. My name is Conan Pinkston. I live at 6132 Waco Way in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm married, have 3 sons, all of which live at home and are still in school. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'll try and be brief. To be clear, I believe, along with a lot of other people who live in Fort Worth, Texas, that the subject at hand that we're talking about tonight is not a civil rights issue. It is not just an issue of inclusiveness or lack thereof. The real issue is how are we going to talk to our kids about their sexuality. In a world that has a tendency to believe that anything and everything is okay, there is such a thing as absolute truth. God created male and female. It has been this way from the beginning of time. Gender is not assigned at birth. It is what it is. You were born a boy or you were born a girl. It is basic biology. It is not a choice you get to make, period. We're talking about children here. We have an obligation to teach them the truth. Listen, folks, it's not acceptable behavior for a boy to show up at school in a dress, present as a girl, and be afforded access to facilities specifically for girls. By the same token, it is also not acceptable behavior for others to bully, ridicule, or otherwise diminish another person for any reason. Please hear my heart on this. Unacceptable behavior is just that, unacceptable. It is not to be promoted nor accommodated. As adults, it is our responsibility and educate to train future generations. Are you really prepared to say that it is acceptable behavior for a boy to show up at school in a dress and present as a girl? That school staff is supposed to treat them as such, and then not tell his parents because you know best? Are you serious about that? That's just bad policy. You can't do that. It's not telling the truth. It also doesn't follow the law. Texas Education Code 26 says in part, a parent is entitled to full information regarding the school activities of parent's child. It also says a board, administrator, educator, or other person may not limit parental rights. Studies consistently show that the more parents are connected and involved with their kids, the more protected they feel and the higher their self-esteem. Why would you ever want to keep such critical information from a child's parents? It is not your role to promote and accommodate a worldview held by such a small minority. You are not responsible to raise our children. We are. I am against this policy on several fronts for several reasons. Thank you for the time that you've taken to listen to me. I trust that the revisions that you propose will be met with a little more satisfaction for myself and others. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jose Castillo, will be followed by Sadrach Alfaro.
Yes, hello, my name is Jose Castillo. I live on Cedar Spring Drive, Fort Worth. And I'm standing here with this board saying, protect my kids. And I was thinking, why you were thinking that your guidelines was going to protect our kids. For example, okay, yes, let's protect our kids. Let's talk about transgenders. It's being said on all these meetings that they are not the ones that rape or molesting other people, but the other ones that dress right and have touched many of these kids that caused them mental disorder when they were little. Right. So why you want to put more people in danger? How can we protect our kids? You know, somebody already says that. How can we let the minority tell us what to do? Yeah. You know, we believe in the United States of America. We're not in Cuba where they can dictate. Right. When 9 people just like you, because you got the power of the authority, going to dictate on my family, on my kids, how to raise my kids. I don't think that's right. Okay, so how can we protect them? By not hiding information from my kids, that's one way. By not trying to separate families, that's one thing. Yes. Have you heard that if a family is good mental, we're going to have a better communities? We're going to have better schools. Everything starts in the family. And you want to take our parents to stop teaching that way? So where are we turning to? Now, it's being said that 80% of the population, 80% of our kids are not happy with it. So, you know, Miss Schufterland, I'm sorry if I said it wrong. She said that, you know, we hope that the board take a vote on this, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna trust you guys anymore. You know, I mean I trust her because she openly says she's against it. So how can we protect our kids? We can vote publicly. You know, I'm not a professional here. I'm not really very smart. But, you know, how many people want this guideline to go on? You know? How many people want to revoke this? You know? That's basic voting, old-fashioned, you know? That's how the way we should have done it in the first place, you know? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next is Alfaro, and be followed by Lorena Alfaro.
Good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon,
people from the executive boards here in this place. Buenas tardes, señoras y señores. So we are here because Fort Worth ISD has presented an agenda related to guidelines for transgender. This is not a decision that the people have taken. It is a decision that you have developed. Most transgender children live in the shadow, hiding from the world that considered natural phenomena, shunned by their families, grow up hating their bodies, and become victims of depression, drugs abuse, violence, and suicide. Alan B. Goldberg and Jonelle Adriano, they wrote an extensive report, and it's shown by ABC News. Gender identity confusion is an emotional disorder that should be treated professionally and compassionately. Gender identity confusion should not be exploited by social activism. What you have proposed as educators of Fort Worth School District does not concern that you should do as an educator. When my children, one of my children in the high school had not done this, his homework and was kept distracted, I received an email and a call for a meeting immediately and addressed the situation. They explained me the procedure. I promised to help my children and under that situation. This is what you should do as an educators. But this you have presenting here is more like a movement of social activism. When a person is to be launched as a candidate for a political party, this is not for you as educators. For this and many other reasons, I disagree with you. I repeal. And I know there is a lot of people here that they didn't have the chance to talk. And I want you, please, stand up and see what they are here right now. Can you stand up, please? Thank you so much, and consider this.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Lorena Alfaro, and Lorena will be followed by Gabriel Izquierdo.
My name is Lorena Alfaro. My address is 5300 Sorghum Drive, La Ciudad Fort Worth, Texas. I translated another person, okay?
If it's okay with you, can I translate?
Please.
Thank you.
Gracias por permitir hablar en esta hora.
Thank you for allowing me to speak this time.
Tengo 3 hijos.
I have 3 kids.
Una se acaba de graduar de la Universidad de Texas Woman.
One graduated from Texas Woman
Con una maestría
with master's degree
en consejería.
in family counseling.
Estoy orgullosa de mis hijos,
I am very proud of my children,
pero tengo uno todavía que está en la high school
but I still have one in high school,
y ese me preocupa.
and he is my concern.
Esto no se trata de discriminación
This is not about discrimination
o de bullying.
or bullying.
En este momento nuestra nación está viviendo un dolor.
At this moment, our nation is living a pain.
El día de anoche,
Last night,
mi esposo y yo orábamos y pedíamos por estas familias que han perdido un ser querido en el ataque terrorista de Orlando.
my husband and I prayed about all this family that lost family members what happened in Orlando,
Pudimos sentir el dolor de ellos
and we felt their pain.
y pensaba en mis hijos,
And I thought about my children.
pero no se trata de discriminación.
But this is not about discrimination.
Si pudiéramos decir de esto, hablaríamos del gordito,
If we talk about discrimination, we would be talking about someone who is chubby
del delgado,
or the one who's
del
very
delgado,
skinny,
del ilegal.
someone illegal.
No se trata de discriminación.
It's not about discrimination.
Hemos trabajado por 20 años con mi esposo con la comunidad hispana
I have worked with my husband about 20 years with the Hispanic community,
y hemos atendido niños abusados.
and we have attended to children that have been abused.
Y la sensibilidad de ese niño
And the sensibility of that child
Es impresionante.
It's impressive.
Siempre el acosador viene y infunde miedo.
The accuser always brings fear.
Y es triste ver los niños.
And it's sad to see the kids.
Y esto se está exponiendo el niño en un baño con diferentes sexos.
And this is what we're exposing the children with different sex.
Es lamentable.
And it's sad.
Usted está tomando decisiones
You are taking decision
por nosotros.
for us.
En Houston.
Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gabriel Izquierdo will be followed by Zeb Pence.
Muy buenas tardes, queridos amigos.
Good afternoon,
Mi nombre es
friends.
Gabriel Izquierdo.
My name is Gabriel Izquierdo.
En Houston
In Houston,
se rechazó una ley semejante a esta.
it was refused a law like this.
Queridos amigos y caballeros,
Friends,
ladies and gentlemen, quiero decirles que la grandeza de esta nación
I want to tell you that the greatness of this nation
y lo que la ha llevado adelante,
and what has keeping it forward,
su fuerza,
their strength,
su poderío,
their power,
es porque el refugio de esta nación
is because the refuge of this nation,
ha sido en Dios.
it has been God.
En estos últimos tiempos,
In these last moments,
necesitamos mantener la nación unida.
we have to keep our nation together.
Y la única manera
And the only way
de mantener la nación unida
is to keep it united,
es manteniendo las familias unidas.
is to keep the families united.
Quiero decirles, queridos amigos del FWISD, quiero decirles en esta tarde
I want to tell you this afternoon,
que rechazamos esta ordenanza.
we repeal this order.
Creemos en los principios bíblicos,
We believe on the guidelines of biblical,
en los principios de nuestra nación,
in the principles of our nation,
los cuales fueron creados
what was created
para tener una nación democrática,
to have a democratic
unida,
nation, united,
fuerte
strong,
y bendecida.
and blessed.
Quiero que sepan en esta tarde,
I want you to know this afternoon
dos niños vienen conmigo.
that my two children are here with me.
Pequeña Faye
But my little Faye
me ha dicho,
has told me,
Father, ahí dice situation scare me. Me espanta esta situación. Me espanta esta situación.
scared of this situation.
Y yo quiero decirles, queridos amigos,
I want to tell you,
que
dear
es el
friends,
tiempo
this is the time
de hacer distinción
to distinguish
entre las tinieblas y la luz,
from the light and the darkness,
la izquierda y la derecha,
from left and right,
entre el hombre y la mujer.
between women and men.
Y esto se llama verdaderamente
And this is called
amor y justicia.
truly love and justice.
Gracias y que Dios les bendiga.
Thank you and God bless you.
Next will be Zeb Pence, followed by Crystal Buenrostro.
First of all, Superintendent Scribner, Mr. Superintendent, pardon me, I would like to thank you for our short but civil discussion after the final forum. While we may oppose each other here, I look forward to the day when we no longer oppose each other, sir. Here we stand. Here we stand. After 2 board meetings and 6 public forums, we still stand for Fort Worth. We will not stop standing until this transgender policy is repealed. To begin, I want to read a letter tonight, an anonymous letter from a teacher. This teacher writes to me and says, "Dear Zeb, thank you for speaking up for me and for hundreds of other teachers that I know who adamantly oppose the transgender policy. We see firsthand the added issues this will bring to the school building. We cannot speak up publicly for fear of retaliation by the district, but most of the teachers I know oppose this policy. Please keep doing what you're doing." End quote. We have focused much attention on the superintendent, and for good reason. He signed the policy into effect, and we believe that this is his administration and the buck stops with him. But this teacher letter and all of the other events of the past 6 weeks require us to look at you, the board, as well. Employees all across this district are upset about being ignored. According to the website, one of the major responsibilities of this board is to foster good community relations. This board has allowed the exact opposite to occur over the past 6 weeks. When I think of the District 9 trustee, I keep thinking of the mother that spoke earlier, that she shamed and publicly humiliated on her Facebook page because of the fact that this mom was exercising her First Amendment free speech rights to talk to other parents at her kid's school. This same trustee calls me and all the others in this room opposed to the transgender policy lunatics. Who does she think she is? She's also the one who conspired to adopt these guidelines behind the public's back and in coordination with outside activist groups. I applaud the District 6 trustee for having the courage to listen and respond to her constituents. This isn't compromise on her part, it's common sense. I'm glad we agree that an elected official should listen to their constituents. Why isn't the rest of the board voting? You say you support the superintendent. If you support the superintendent, then have his back. Put this to a vote. Do you really believe that the solution to a backroom deal is another backroom deal? No. We believe the solution is accountability. Submit yourselves to the accountability of your constituents. Repeal the policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Crystal Buenrostro will be followed by David Henderson.
Hi, my name is Crystal, and I am an incoming junior at Chisholm Trail High School, and I am against this, and for my reason is I have insecurities, and I'm concerned for kids. I have a 9-year-old sister, and I'm concerned for her. What if something happens to her? What if something were to happen to another kid? And my concern would be just what if my sister was inside a restroom one day and someone decides to go in there? You know, like what would I do? How would you feel if it was your kids? And me, myself, I just wouldn't feel safe at school at all. I mean, I get that we have to be equal and that we have to do our best to treat others like equally, but I honestly don't. I'm not for this law. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
For David Henderson, you will be followed by Hilda Buenrostro.
I'm not real sure how I'm managing to stand up here today. The events of the last few days have left so many LGBT people exhausted and spent. Homophobia and transphobia, no matter how it is couched, can become lethal. After all the distorted information spewed in this room the last few weeks, if school were in session this week, we'd have a nightmare on our hands. Thousands of our lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender students would fear walking down our halls because the tendency to incite distrust and fear has real consequences that extend far beyond our educational process. We cannot equip our children for real life if we deny them one in our schools. No matter how one tries to spin it, no amount of someone's discomfort and unfounded fears can ever justify denying other persons their basic human rights, including basic bodily functions. Dehumanizing people spawns hate speech with a predictable outcome. We must remain dignified in adversity, embrace inclusion over fear. We must love without qualification, acknowledging not just our existence, but our right to coexist on our own terms would be a very good start. When we get lazy about history, when we deny those lessons to our children, the consequences can sound like this. Stanley Almodovar III, 23. Amanda Alvear, 25. Oscar Aracena, 26. Rodolfo Ayala, 33. Omar Capo, 20. Simon Carrillo, 31. Luis Daniel Conde, 39. Corey James Connell, 21. Tevin Eugene Crosby, 25. Anthony Disla, 25. Dianca Drayton, 32. Leroy Fernandez, 25. Fernandez Mercedes Marisol Flores, 26. Peter Gonzalez Cruz, 22. Juan Ramon Guerrero, 22. Paul Terrell Henry, 41. Jason Benjamin Josephet, 19. Eddie Jamuldroy Justice, 30. Christopher Leonin, 32. Alejandro Barrios Martinez, 21. Akira Murray, 18. Geraldo Ortiz Jimenez, 25. Joel Rayon Panigua, 31. Jean Carlos Mendez Perez, 35. Enrique L. Rios, 25.
Thank you.
It certainly is time.
Thank you, sir. Hilda Buenrostro is next, and then we'll be followed by Whitney Pent.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Gracias por su tiempo.
Thank you for your time.
Estoy aquí
I am here
con mi comunidad cristiana,
with my Christian community,
como cristiana siguiendo las leyes de Dios.
like a Christian, following guidelines of God.
Y amo estas leyes,
And I love these guidelines,
no solamente
not only
porque creo en ellas,
because I believe in them,
sino porque también me inculcan
because they also tell
seguir
me
las terrenales,
to follow the ones in earth.
siempre y cuando
Only
no rompan
they don't break,
las creencias cristianas
they don't break my
y el
beliefs
bienestar de mi familia.
and the goodness of my family.
Quiero hacer saber
I want to let you know
mi desacuerdo
I repeal
como cristiana,
like a Christian,
como madre
like a mother,
y tal vez como futura abuela,
and possibly like a future grandmother,
porque la seguridad de una escuela
because the security of a
es para el futuro también.
of the school, it's also for the future.
Soy maestra dominical desde hace 13 años.
I'm a Sunday school teacher for about
Trabajo para un distrito escolar más de 10 años.
13 years in a district for 10 years.
Y discúlpenme,
And sorry,
pero sé la clase de seguridad que tenemos en nuestras escuelas.
but I know that kind
Yo
of security
trabajo
that I
en una
have
de
in school
ellas.
because I work in one of them.
Y discúlpeme otra vez,
And I'm sorry for this.
porque para mí en personal,
For me personally,
meter a una persona
to
que
put,
tiene un miembro diferente,
to put a person that has a different member
no creo que es la mejor seguridad para los otros niños.
is not the best security for other
Porque
children.
si no hemos podido parar
Because if we haven't stopped
el bullying,
the bullying,
la discriminación
discrimination
dentro de enfrente de un maestro en una aula escolar,
in front of a teacher, in front of in their classes,
no la vamos a parar en un baño.
we're not going to stop it
Porque
inside
no
a
vamos a
restroom.
hacer,
That's not going to happen.
no vamos a hacer
That's not going to happen.
adentro de un baño con cámaras.
Because we're not going to put cameras in
Tú
those
podrás ver
restrooms.
con una cámara quién entra,
You can see on the camera
¿Y
who
quién
goes
sale?
in and who goes out.
pero cuando salen el daño ya estará hecho.
But when they come out, the danger will already be in there.
Tengo 36 años de edad
I'm 36 years old,
y todavía no puedo definir quién es gay, quién es transexual y quién es una mujer, ¿cómo se llama?
lesbiana.
Lesbiana.
I'm 36 years old and I cannot still figure it out who's gay, who's lesbian, or who's transgender.
Si yo como adulta no puedo definirlo si no se pone un vestido,
And if I'm an adult and cannot identify this,
mucho menos un niño de 3 a 6 años.
unless a child of
Como
3, 4
maestra.
years, like a teacher,
Tengo que todavía ayudarles
I still have to
a ir
help
al baño a
them
los niños de 3 a 4.
to take them to the restroom on ages 3 to 5.
Confío en ustedes porque son personas estudiadas.
I trust in you because you are educational people.
Confío en las leyes de Dios también.
And I trust the laws of God.
Y solo quiero poner mi desacuerdo.
And I repeal to this.
Esta tarde,
This afternoon,
tomemos conciencia.
take conscious.
Nos preocupan también ellos,
Fine.
como
Thank you.
igual a los demás.
Gracias. Thank you. Next is Whitney Pent. Will be followed by Reyes Malagon.
Hello, my name is Whitney Pent, and I've already spoken at the Arlington Heights Forum on some of these points, but I wanted to take this opportunity to speak to the entire board. In an environment like this, it's hard to find things in common. However, whether you are for or against these guidelines, we all have at least one thing in common. That is, we want all children to be protected, valued, and loved. I believe that that was the hopeful goal of these guidelines, even though it has not been the result. As I'm sure you know, the Fort Worth ISD website outlines the 7 major responsibilities of the Board of Trustees. Number 7 is to foster good community relations. Perhaps this is a rhetorical question, but I ask it sincerely. Do you believe that the covert insertion of guidelines, which carry serious social, political, and even religious implications, is in fact fostering good community relations? A quick review of this past week's forums would say no. Another page on the Fort Worth ISD website is dedicated to education on the topic of bullying. The page does a great job at outlining the various forms of bullying that are not tolerated in our schools. One of the definitions for social bullying describes it as leaving someone out on purpose. I find it disheartening that the majority that oppose these guidelines feel just that, left out on purpose. And is it at all possible that the public and the elected board were left out of this decision by design? If so, and it sure feels that way, then the implementation of these guidelines violates the very bullying standards that you are attempting to uphold. That said, I would like to express my appreciation for the willingness of the superintendent and the board to take the time and be open-minded in respect to these guidelines. However, I will offer a word of caution. It is unlikely that the majority of Fort Worth residents will see a bipartisan review committee as an acceptable compromise. Why? Because while these guidelines are being opposed for a variety of reasons on many levels, one reason rises above the rest. Democracy was clearly and deliberately sidestepped, and the majority of the Fort Worth parents and taxpayers are not happy with it. So if you are certain that this is what the Fort Worth ISD and the community needs, if you truly were innocent in your motivations to implement these guidelines, then why not repeal the guidelines and put them to a vote by the elected board? Let the people have their voice. Failure to do so will say only one thing to the parents and taxpayers of the city, and that is that you believe you know how to protect the children of the city better than we do. Superintendent, board, please repeal these guidelines and put them to a vote and let the people have their voice. Thank you.
Next, we have Reyes Malagon. He will be followed by Ross Connor.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Yo soy padre de 4 hijos,
I'm father of 4 children.
2 de ellos graduados
2 of them graduated
y 2 están todavía en la escuela.
and 2 in school.
Y uno, el más pequeño,
And the smallest one,
él quiere dejar la escuela
he wants to leave school
y trabajar conmigo
and go to work with me
por las cosas que está mirando.
because of the things he sees at school.
Entonces yo estoy aquí en esta tarde
So I'm here this afternoon
para defender
to defend
a mis hijos.
my children.
No tan solo mis hijos,
And not only my children,
sino también los niños
also those children
que no tienen todavía la capacidad
that they don't have that capacity
de entender
to understand
entre lo bueno
between the good
y lo malo.
and the bad.
Estoy aquí
I am here
en contra de esta ley que se quiere pasar.
against this law that wants to go
¿Por
through.
qué en vez de ayudarles a los niños en la escuela,
Why is it that instead of helping them at school,
por qué lo estamos espantando? ¿Por qué queremos destruir su futuro?
why are we scaring them and destroying their future?
Muchos niños quisieran tener el privilegio
Many kids want to have the privilege
de estar en una escuela
to be at school,
y no lo pueden hacer.
and they can't do that.
¿Cuántos niños
How many
se
children
están muriendo
are dying
de hambre,
of hunger,
de enfermedad?
disease?
¿Y por qué no cuidamos nada de eso?
How come we don't take care of that?
La palabra de Dios dice
The Word of God says,
en Romanos capítulo 13,
Romans 13,
que toda autoridad
that all authority
es puesta por Dios.
is put by God.
Pero hay de aquel
But there is those
que quiera quebrar la ley de
that
Dios.
wants to break the law of
Cada
God,
quien es responsable
that everybody's responsible
por sus hechos.
for their acts.
Lo que acaba de pasar en Nuevo Orleans,
What happened
en Orlando,
in Orlando,
muchos de ellos eran mayores
all of them were adults,
y Dios dice
and God
que
says
Dios nos dio un libre albedrío.
that they're free to do as they wish.
Pero los niños
But the
no
children,
tienen la capacidad.
they don't have that capacity.
América para mí
America for me
es mi casa,
is my home.
es mi hogar.
It's
Y
my
cuando
place to
pasó
live.
lo del 9/11,
What happened with
me
9/11,
dolió.
it hurt me.
Yo estoy aquí
I am here
para pelear
to
por
repeal
mi casa,
for my home
porque mi casa es USA.
because my home is
And
USA.
I'm here to fight for them.
That's right.
I'm here to fight for America. God bless you.
I'm here to fight for America. God bless you.
Our final speaker for tonight will be Ross Connor. Final speaker for tonight is Ross Connor.
Ross Connor, 2803 Scott Avenue, just north of Poly High School. I have 5 children, public and private educator, father. I'm your biggest ally, Dr. Scribner, board. I'm an involved parent, not overbearing. I'm quietly shepherding my children through the school processes, helping when needed, taking the training wheels off when it's time. I'm committed to reinforcing the information taught in school to ensure my children are equipped for a career of their choosing. Selfishly, I want to proudly state that's right, they have a Texas education. And I appreciate art and athletics. I appreciate inquisitive, well-read minds that treat others with respect. I appreciate the importance of faith and a moral foundation. I appreciate patience and unconditional love. I appreciate boundaries and the times when true love says simply no. And guess what? I'm not alone. There are thousands in Fort Worth just like me. Just like me, you say yes, just like me. Oh, they may have black skin or brown skin or be white. They may have come from another country originally. You know what? They may even vote differently than I do. They may not speak English as a primary language, but make no mistake about it, they're as committed as I am. Thousands of them committed to seeing their kids get the most out of their primary schooling years, just like me. On the surface, Dr. Scribner, you and I seem alike, but we are not. I think you, in fact, are the biggest bully in this room. And here's something I just can't figure out with respect to the transgender policy. I can't seem to understand how in the world the chief educator in our city, educating over 86,000 lives a year, the future leaders of our city, would want to put forth such a horribly bad and inaccurate example of civic leadership and democracy. I mean, can we all at least agree the best form of leadership and education is by example? I bet even you learned by example, in fact, Dr. Scribner. I can't seem to reconcile the fact that our kids will soon understand, if not already, that in the real world, open forums, open minds, the soliciting of all viewpoints before making a decision doesn't really pay off. Why, kids, you can even use personal agendas and non-disclosure to advance your political will. You can even give lip service to fundamental changes on misguided policies. You can still get your way. Well, like many thousands of other parents, I don't teach my kids to get their way at all costs. And fortunately, I'll be able to speak the truth to my own children regarding moral foundation, civic service, responsibility. I bet other parents in Fort Worth will as well. Well, like many thousands of other parents, I've chosen with many to stand in the gap. No more backroom deals, no more hidden agendas, no more arrogance, no more Dallas lawyers. That's not the Fort Worth way, Dr. Scribner. You must go. I can only hope our board will see to that. If not, the changes must be made there as well. Don't amend. Repeal the transgender policy.
Thank you all for your comments. We'll now recess and reconvene in the board conference room. Okay. In accordance with the open meetings law, the board opened the meeting at 5:30 PM in the boardroom with a quorum present. Recessed open session in the boardroom and is now reconvened at 7:21 PM in the open session in the board conference room with a quorum present. Discussion of agenda items. Do we have any questions concerning agenda items? No, ma'am, just agenda items,
I mean-
consent agenda.
Consent, okay. I might have one, just a second. I don't have a good take on this, but somebody called my blog and said that there is an item on the agenda, probably the consent agenda, that duplicates the ISIP program. Is Mike here? The other Mike.
Plato and Odyssey, is that what you're speaking of?
No, I wasn't talking about Odyssey. I was talking, ISIP is grades K3 or something like that, and it's a monthly test that they give kids to make sure they're learning what they're supposed to learn. There you are. Do you know what that is? Did the person?
We don't have anything on the agenda of that.
Okay, so you think the person who said that was mistaken? It sounds like it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. No other questions? I would like to ask for 11D and E to be pulled for a separate vote. I plan to abstain from those
You want me to go get
two items. Okay.
Is that the JJA?
Yes, ma'am. JJ and the juvenile.
Is Lena Pope involved in that anyway?
Yes, ma'am. It's on their property.
Okay, I'll abstain too.
Okay. Any other questions or no?
Consent agenda,
Consent agenda.
B3, Big Brains by Imagine Learning. Can somebody elaborate on that? Yes, I could have turned my mic on. Big Brains.
We're supposed to eat now? I guess we're supposed to eat now.
It looks like
Use my teacher voice.
I use mine.
Big Brains is a fact fluency program that we provide to all of our elementary campuses for them to, to review their facts and to get, faster and at their facts.
I understand that. What are the outcomes data?
Yes, and I'm not sure if it was provided in the board information, but yes, we do have data for the students. We have a pre-test that the students take, and we have a post-test, and the average improvement for students is 57% from where they start to where they end up, and the average post-test is at 95%.
So one other question with regard to mobility, how are we tracking the kids?
That's a good question. Each of the students have an individual login, and so when students move from campus to campus, it does move with them. And so when we pull those reports are based on the students that are on that campus at that particular time.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to comment on that. Let's pull that off. I'd like to pull it off. Yeah, I mean, the teaching number facts is very simple. It's done all the time. You do it usually orderly. This is another example of putting something and taking it away from people and putting it on a machine. And yes, I'm sure the statistics are good, but they're just as good if you do it orally. You recall in the KIP program, the founding teacher did the rolling the nines. The kids have these sayings that they do over and over again. It builds the confidence. It's much better than having people do this on a. The thing about a computer is it doesn't reward your humanity. I mean, I spend hours every day on it, honest to God. But you have a teacher looking back at you, it's much more powerful. So I like to pull that off.
Okay.
You guys will probably move forward anyway, but it just takes it's real easy to teach that stuff. It doesn't take a lot of planning.
It's hard when you have children that have high mobility, Dr. Sutherland, and if you're teaching at West Creek and I'm at Meadowbrook Elementary, it's very difficult to know what the status is of that student. So that's my concern, and if you could convince me that the mobility isn't an issue, I'd be more than happy to go your way.
I don't know what you mean by mobility.
Mobility when students move.
We'll discuss out front, since we're going to pull it for a separate vote, and we'll allow the discussion to take place at that time. Any other questions on consent agenda?
No.
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Toby Jackson.
I'm sorry.
Okay. This concludes discussion of agenda items. We will now recess for executive session in the board conference room for executive session as authorized by Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code under Sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.076.
Raise your hand if this is your first airplane ride. Okay, 18 years old. You must have a government ID.
We left Fort Worth ISD with 30 cadets approximately 6 o'clock en route to Washington National Airport to pick up commercial transportation on to Gettysburg National Battlefield Park as part of our U.S. military history course.
Follow Sergeant Harris. Inside, make sure you have your bag.
Each school had a set number of cadets, anywhere from 1 cadet to 4 based upon their enrollment.
Be prepared to take everything out your pockets.
Get in single file line. Come on, guys, let's go. Hustle up.
It's a first-time experience for a lot of our young people, and it's helping them understand our American heritage and our military history.
If your sinuses clog, okay, and it will clear your ears, all right?
Get something on the middle seat, go ahead and remove it and invite somebody in. Thank you. Welcome aboard.
We've landed at Reagan National Airport. We are en route to Gettysburg National Battlefield tomorrow.
The Confederate Army moved north into Pennsylvania. Having students that are interested in history and learning about history and having the opportunity to go to a place like Gettysburg is outstanding. Lee is literally running out of forage and food for his army. Those students really are seeing what America is. Yes.
When you said some civilians responded to the battle,
questions that they're asking, it's amazing to see them get excited about history.
John will walk you through the medical, and then if you guys come see me in the top left, we're the infantry. So this was our most prized possession, okay? More so than our diary and our Bible and everything else.
And they actually showed us how the guns work and everything, how you gotta use the stuff properly, and how people or soldiers used that back then. That actually got my attention. I took pictures, videos, and everything, and it was something significant.
The assistant surgeon would hand me a scalpel.
The purpose is to connect what we've studied in class to the actual battlefield.
I'd have a bed, one officer to the tent. They might use a wall tent like this.
I don't have a sidearm. That's what I got. And a bayonet.
Seeing the JROTC cadets has been an opportunity for me to see what it would be like to bring the students here. I know they've been discussing the different battles, so it's an opportunity for them to visualize. This is interesting in the fact that I can actually see the grounds and the different places that I've been learning about as a student in Kutztown, and it's also given me a visual for what I'm going to need if I ever do get to teach students about Civil War history.
Each individual soldier's experience, how is it that we can understand it? There are lots of ways. Early photos, early maps, early accounts, newspapers, books, and everything like that. Official reports, of course. But the battlefield itself, linked with what people said, wrote, and erected upon it, is a real key thing in understanding this fight.
Well, now we really understand what the soldiers, like, how much they had to walk and how, like, the weather was and all the stuff they needed, like water.
There are well over 1,000 monuments, markers, and tablets on the battlefield. We rarely give an exact number because simply we do not know, and we argue about what a monument, marker, or tablet is. But for the most part, the monuments we're passing today are monuments represented to individual regiments or artillery batteries. The average size of a regiment at Gettysburg for the Northern Army is about 300 men.
I'm excited that they are actually connecting and learning from college students and our National Park Service Rangers.
All of these, I think it's pretty great, you know. You see all the landscape, you see where the battlefield, where everything is at from our current view right now as well. It's an amazing experience overall.
There are about 30 individual farmhouses, I guess, and farms that are incorporated into the park, but we're pretty much walking through, private property at the time of the Civil War. On July 2nd, this area, Cemetery Ridge, was supposed to be occupied by the 3rd Army Corps under the command of Daniel Edgar Sickles.
I think it's very interesting, and I like how it was
preserved, and because I can see how it was for the soldiers who were fighting here.
We not only have pictures taken at Devil's Den right after the battle, and I mean July of 1863, but you also have some of the only photos taken here of the dead at Gettysburg.
So far, everything's been really amazing. Touring the battle, it gives you a realization of everything that America has been through, and the fact that we prospered through all of it. It's mind-blowing, it's inspiring.
The Sherfy Rose Farm Tract, let's say during the battle, somewhere around 19,000 Americans crossed this area. And there were something like 9,000 of the 50,000 casualties of the battle on this one tract of land.
It's really interesting, the picture, where people were fighting during the battle at this time, and you're actually standing where people were fighting and dying for what they believed in.
Here we are on Cemetery Hill, and I guess the first thing that I always like to point out is Cemetery Hill is part of the battlefield.
I think in seeing GROTC from Fort Worth, coming out, it's not only a great sign for the future that kids are interested, or adults are interested in sharing their passion, with these kids. So that, because I know that when you get them out to a place, they have a better chance of having a great experience, one they'll never forget. It could be that some of these kids here today, if they're really enjoying it and they say, aha, now I understand this thing I've learned about, now I get it.
3 more guns up here. They captured the summit of East Cemetery Hill. If the Union permanently loses Cemetery Hill, there is no more important hill at Gettysburg than this.
Your instructors talked to you guys, had you guys do your own research, put your slides together. You received the presentation from a professor, so you had that audio, you had visual, but you actually had the walking in the ground today. So you got all 3 different phases. And some of you guys, I know, are that touchy-feely, so I know it played a big role for you guys to actually be out there at the battlefield.
It's a great opportunity to actually, physically walk the battlefield, while other students can only say that they've learned about it in the textbooks. I can say that I've actually been there.
You guys talk about how going to the battlefield and seeing how the layout of the land helps you learn. And that's so important to me as a teacher, because that explains to me how to present my information to you guys.
In accordance with the open meetings law, the board opened a meeting at 5:30 p.m. in a boardroom with a quorum present, recessed and reconvened open session in the board conference room. Adjourned regular session, convened executive session. Adjourned executive session is now reconvened open session at 7:54 p.m. in the boardroom with a quorum present. Moving on, number 15, accepting consent agenda item, or consent agenda minus items that were asked to be pulled, which is going to include 11B3 and 11D and 11E. So do I have a motion accepting consent agenda items minus 11B3, 11D, and 11E? We have a motion by Dr. Avila and a second by Ms. Toby Jackson. Any discussion? No discussion. Please move to vote. Motion passes 7-4 and 0 against. 16A, action items that were removed. We will begin with 11B3. We have 11B3, which is approving the purchase of Big Brains by Imagine Learning, Inc. We have a motion by Mr. Robbins. We have a second by Dr. Sims. Any discussion? No discussion. Please move to vote. Motion passes 6-4 and 1 against. We will move on to 11D. Which is the approval of the MOU between Fort Worth ISD and Juvenile Justice Alternative Education Program for the 2016-2017 school year. This is one where Dr. Avila's motion, second by Dr. Sims. I will be abstaining from this vote as Tarrant County Juvenile Services is my employer. No discussion. Please move to vote. Motion passes 5-4 and 2 abstentions.
I abstain because Lena Pope Home is involved in this contract, and I've been on the board for several years.
11E, which is the approval of the contract between Fort Worth ISD and Tarrant County for juvenile teaching services for 2016-2017 school year. We have a motion by Mr. Robbins, a second by Ms. Jackson. Any discussion? This is, yes, the two items that I'd asked to be pulled. And I will abstain from this one as well, for it's the same entity with my employer. No discussion. Please move the vote. Motion passes 5-4 and 2 abstentions. 16B, we have no personnel for this evening, so we will move on to 17 reports and presentations. First up will be suicide prevention. Mr. Steiner, you ready to give your report?
We are.
Floor is yours.
Mr. Ramos, members of the board, Dr. Scribner, we appreciate the time this evening. A couple months ago, when Ms. Roberts and I were here talking about the comprehensive wellness policy, we mentioned in there some of the statistics from our own students related to suicide, and at that time the board had asked if we would come back at a later date and share some more specific information. So tonight, Cindy Bethany, our district coordinator for crisis response, and I are here to talk about suicide in our community in the Fort Worth ISD, and more specifically what we're doing in terms of prevention, intervention, and postvention, how we follow up. When you take a look at suicide from a national perspective, the Centers for Disease Control identifies as one of the top 3 causes for the death among youth in our country, outpacing a pretty frightening list of diseases that you'll see there combined. So we know it's a serious crisis for us. On a daily basis, we're looking at kids to see what their needs are. And so you'll see on this slide, we talk about that 4 out of 5 times when kids commit suicide or attempts, they've given clear signs that they had intention to do so. So in the school district, our staff are with these kids 7.5 hours a day. So we have a unique opportunity to pay close attention, to understand the signs and symptoms to look for, and help intervene. When we talk about the definition of suicide, we have to look at the difference between ideations or thoughts alone versus ideations with a plan and a means to attempt suicide. These are the things that a student support services staff look for in conducting suicide risk assessments, which we do at our campuses, in order to determine what level of risk a student might be at and what's the appropriate intervention at that time. Self-harm is an important distinguishment to make because we have a lot of kids in our school district that do self-harm from time to time. A self-harm outcry is not necessarily a suicide attempt, and oftentimes it's confused for that. We take these outcries very, very seriously. All of our student support staff do. It's very dangerous, and oftentimes self-harm attempts can lead to very dangerous outcomes in hospitalization. So let's talk about the numbers for suicide. Nationally, 17% of the youth that we see in this bullet have considered suicide within the last year, and you can see females lead that category. 8% have attempted at least one or more times in the last year. Again, this is national data, led by females as well. And 7% have actually attempted with an injury, meaning it required hospital care or medical care of some sort. In Texas, 12.1 of our deaths per 100,000 gives us the 9th highest suicide rate in the country. When we look at high school students in our own state, it's really important to look at the number here. 29% across the state of Texas reported over a 2-week period in the last year feeling sad or hopeless, which is a precursor for what we see for suicidal behavior. So this next slide looks at Fort Worth ISD kids specifically. When Ms. Roberts and I were here, we talked about a survey that we conducted called the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. In that survey, that was 2,600 of our 9th through 12th graders, a randomized survey. You can see our percentage of kids that felt sad or hopeless, 29% exactly matches that state statistic. Almost 14% have seriously considered it in the last 12 months. 11.5% had a plan. And 2.9%, almost 3% of our 9th through 12th graders in this survey had actually attempted suicide that led to an injury of some sort that required medical care in the last year. So this is a very serious issue for us. We're not immune to it by any means. In Fort Worth ISD, though, when we talk about suicide and suicide events, it occurs within a larger context of critical incidents. And so Cindy's going to talk with you a little bit about what that larger context looks like and what we're doing to prevent and intervene.
So this chart reflects total critical incidents for the year. And those categories are suicide risk assessments. That's intervention. That is us intervening. As well as violent behavior assessments. That's intervention again. Those student deaths and faculty deaths, I want to make the distinction that none of those occurred on our campuses. And that when we talk about deaths, we intervene in those in a post-vention kind of way. So we are doing, post-vention is what we do to assist a campus to get them back to functioning after a critical incident. The other distinction that I wanted to make is that when we talk about deaths, these are all causes. So students who die by illness, students who die from an automobile accident. We had 2 suicide deaths in our Fort Worth ISD community this school year. I think that's... the other thing that I wanted to mention about this particular slide, sorry.
Oh, go back.
I'm back on the other one, is that those suicide risk assessments have increased yearly, and we attribute that to improved prevention efforts and identification of students through those risk assessments. So the dispositions, this is what happened, this is what we did with those students that we did risk assessments on. So you can see that 45% of those students were assessed low risk, and they were returned to class with a student support plan. 52%, so those next 2 categories together, parents picked up their child and were referred to either an outside agency or referred to the hospital for another assessment. And then
I also wanted to mention, in the case when kids are returned to class, we always contact parents. so that people understand anytime that we're reaching out and assessing a student, the first thing we do is contact the parents. Sometimes we aren't able to reach them at that point, but as soon as we are able to, we inform them and make sure they understand what's happening.
Thanks. So these are numbers from the Child Fatality Review Board of the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's Office. In 2015, there were 10 youth suicides in the ages of 10 through 18, and that's countywide. So we know that there may be those numbers. Our community, our mental health community, believes that those numbers are higher for suicide, but many of those were not ruled suicide by the medical examiner.
And we also see oftentimes that the perception in the community or by families in the school community may be that this number is higher and they will attribute student deaths to what they believe was a suicide, but this data is specifically those deaths that the medical examiner has confirmed, investigated, and confirmed as suicides. So we have to deal with social media and rumors and all kinds of things that happen when horrible things happen with students and or faculty. So a lot of times it's really a challenge for us to mitigate misinformation out there, but these are the confirmed suicides in our community.
As Mike mentioned, when you talk about suicide, there are three areas: prevention, intervention, and postvention. In the area of prevention, in 2015, the Texas legislature mandated that all educators have suicide prevention training. And they put out a registry that detailed evidence-based programs. We are lucky that Fort Worth ISD was already using a program on that registry. In 2010, a group of citizens, teachers, counselors, intervention specialists, parents came together and looked at what was available in the prevention community and chose Lifelines, mostly because of the way that it is trained. Lifelines trains faculty and staff first, parents second, and students last. So this is, Lifelines is for secondary. We also train suicide prevention for our elementary students in our guidance curriculum, and we talk about hurting yourself and helpful people and how to reach out for help. In 2015-16, whoops, I think I skipped.
I can do it. And so this past year, we trained over 35,000 people in the district through Lifelines. You can see the majority of those is almost a third of our students, which is really exciting because that's where we're going to see a major impact within the campus community as students taking ownership of it, looking out for their peers. One of the challenges that you'll see, though, with any suicide prevention curriculum is saturation. We want to get it to all 86,000 students. We want to get it to all of their parents and their siblings and the community and all of the community stakeholders. That's a challenge that's in front of us every year, but we continue every year to get to as many people as possible in as many ways as possible.
Again, the suicide intervention is what we do when a student is identified as having suicidal ideation. We do risk assessments, and we showed you those numbers. Fort Worth ISD was one of the first school districts in the state to have a formalized suicide risk assessment process. And a community member mentioned recently in a meeting that there are 5 school districts in Tarrant County who do suicide risk assessments, and the other 4 are using our forms. So I think we have something to be proud of. Currently, we are using the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale, and in the next school year, 2016-17, we will be using that in an electronic version on our secondary campuses. We're very excited about that. JPS, MHMR of Tarrant County, and Parkland Hospital are all using that CSSRS. So with regards to postvention is what we do following a critical incident. Again, it is how we help put the campus back on the right track. We've been doing postvention in Fort Worth ISD since 2000, and we train all of our student support services staff in critical incident stress management. They get 27 hours of training, and they are prepared to set up safe rooms, to notify faculty and staff, to how to notify students. It really is quite a process, and probably one of the best in the country.
So hopefully it's evident to you and with what we've discussed tonight that for a long time we've gone far beyond maybe what we see around our peers in terms of what we do to prevent suicide, to intervene when it happens, and to help support the community in healing afterwards. We know that there's always more work to do, and anything that we can do for your respective districts and campuses, when they ask for it, we always respond in whatever creative way we can. So we'll continue the effort, continue to provide you updates as you want, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have now.
Okay. Ms. Toby Jackson.
Thank you, President Ramos. The first question I have is, how many hours of training is required to be considered a trainer?
Lifelines trainer? Mm-hmm. They are cadre of trained trainers received a day of training, so 8 hours of training.
Okay, and that's for...
And that's updated yearly.
So, and what about parents, if we're training them, or students?
Parents get an hour.
Okay.
Students, the training is 4 45-minute sessions for students. Counselors, especially at the secondary level, have combined that and really try to get it into a couple of class periods.
Well, you know, we've had quite a few discussions around here recently about substitute teachers. It seems to me when we can't find a substitute teacher and we need to teach something in a class, wouldn't it be good to do lifelines at that time? Have we implemented it that way?
Absolutely agree. We haven't talked about that, but we'll definitely talk about that with leadership. I think that would be a great idea. And we're also working with Dr. Lewis in professional development to look at opportunities with New Teacher Academy and ongoing professional development to intertwine these types of things.
That'd be cool. Thank you so much.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Mm-hmm. Next, moving on to 17B, preliminary 2016-2017 budgets. Mrs. Sharo, whenever you're ready.
Yes, sir. All right. President Ramos, Dr. Scribner, and members of the board. The purpose of this evening's presentation is to provide the board with the final review of the general fund, debt service fund, and food service fund budgets in readiness for the adoption on June the 28th. Here you'll see, as we've discussed before, at June 30, 2016, general fund reserves are estimated to be just under $159 million. The final audited revenue and expenditures for 15-16 will be finalized about in September after the external audit is complete, so I will keep you posted as to how that outcome comes and what our fund balance will be at June 30th of 2016. This is a little we've seen this slide before, and there's nothing that's changed. I'm estimating revenue for next year at $728 million. It's up from prior years due to taxable property value increases and increase in average daily attendance, not only just in normal mainstream ADA, but increase in weighted ADA based upon our student population served. So right now, I think $728 million in revenue is a good figure. We will have a final PEAM submission coming up in July, and with that final submission, we may have a few updates in ADA, and the state aid may increase a little. So let's hope that happens. On this next budget, you will see that we have expenditures of $749.2 million. There has been no change in the line items that we've reviewed at length on many occasions, except for adding $800,000 for administration to work on strategies to reduce the percentage of unfilled classrooms. It contains $51,000 as beginning teacher salary starting in the 2016-17 school year, a 2% across the board salary increase to all employees, and an increase to the employer's contribution to health insurance premiums to $287 per month, up $50 per month over our prior years. So currently we're sitting at $749 million in expenditures. With that said, when you're looking at the revenue at 728 and expenditures about 749.2, we're looking at a decrease in fund balance on June 30 of 17 of approximately $21 million, but we will have fund balance of approximately $138 million at that time, which is 18.4% of our reserves to annual expenditures. As required by law, the board is required to adopt budgets by object code in revenue and by function in expenditures. And so outlined on this slide are the current revenue and expenditures by function. Next, we're looking at the debt service. This slide has changed slightly. The revenue is the same. However, as I've been talking, we're going to have to sell bonds, and we're going to sell bonds in July. And when we sell bonds in July, we're going to have to make additional debt, principal and interest payments in February of 17 and August of 17. And working with our financial advisors, we're looking at a debt payment in the 16-17 school year of about $101.6 million. So with that said, it's almost a wash. Revenue is going to be equaling our expenses, maybe a slight dip into fund balance. But at June 30 of 17, we should have about $40 million in our reserve for debt service. And again, I just wanted to show you again, we have to provide this information by object code in the revenue and by function on the expenditure side. So this is what our debt service budget would look like next year. And finally, on June 28th, we've got to adopt a budget for food service. And you'll see here that we have revenue of about $52.2 million and expenditures over 60. But what Mr. Kavassis and Mr. Headley have done, as we've discussed, they are going to be coming out of fund balance in order to supply some equipment, much needed equipment to our schools. Dipping into these reserves is approved by the USDA, and so which permits the usage of fund balance for these purposes. And so it's very good that we have the fund balance and that we're spending that fund balance much needed equipment for our cafeterias. And again, this also now then would display the food service budget for 16-17 by revenue and by function. So with that said, going forward, this would be the recommended budgets for final approval in a couple of weeks. On the 28th of June, we'll come back with a similar short presentation outlining these recommended budgets for the 16-17 school year. So I will take any questions that you have.
Dr. Avila?
Thank you. And thank you, Elsie, for the updated report. I know that you tend, as you should, to be somewhat conservative in both our revenue and our expenditure estimates. And when we budget a deficit, typically we come in better than what was budgeted. But I am a little concerned about the size of this deficit, and what aspects of that deficit spending, are going to be ongoing, recurring. That are going to be difficult to change later down the road when we don't have that kind of fund balance versus things that we could easily cut. So, and I know we've looked and talked about in some of our workshops, some ways to save some money, and I think my colleagues, in general are in agreement on the budget, but $20 million, that's a pretty big deficit. And I know we've seen some plans where, you're working towards having a balanced budget over the next couple of years, and that's great. But just, if we don't have to spend it, don't spend it. I'd hate to see us chew up that fund balance this year. So.
A comment on that, Dr. Avila, is yes, you're right. The thing is when you look at deficits of that size, you have to remember that in the future we're going to have to modify that, and so to stay within a certain percentage of our fund balance to our expenditures. Additionally, you're correct in that we are pretty good. We are very good stewards of spending what we have to, but not everything, if in fact we can. So we try to be fiscally responsible. And so we're spending about 96-97% of our budget. So it is estimated that when the dust settles, we will not quite have a $21 million deficit. And I've already explained going forward, we're going to roll up our sleeves coming early on in the early months to come. And I think we're going to do a lot to look at the budget, do some selective abandonment of things that do not work, and to have a really good conversations with this board on priorities that we want to fund going forward, and to earnestly get to a balanced budget by 18-19. If we do that, we'll be within the ranges that is strong for a fund balance. So there's going to be much work to be done.
I have all the confidence in the world in you and your team, and under Dr. Scribner's leadership, that y'all will get it done.
Thank you.
Dr. Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr. President. I first want to acknowledge the fact that there was a little fracas over the last 2 weeks about the $50 because it was reduced at a time when some people wasn't expecting it. I was partly to blame for that, and I just want to take my share of it. On page 21, there's a really neat chart, and I was kind of hoping that you would send me these 21, 22, and 23. You're responding to the request I made a year ago to have breakouts for the campuses.
Yes.
And I'm going to put this on my blog if you get it. It's really interesting. If you look at the end, you'll see great numbers of differences between the sites. I don't know. I don't ask you to do anything extra right now, but eventually we should have the enrollment. I mean, I know that we're never satisfied, but then we can get, because there's a couple here that look like they're way out of bounds. I wouldn't say this if everybody was here, but Dunbar has a very large number, and it has a small number of children. I believe it's 2.3 million, whereas the average is something like 400,000. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but I just wanted to point out that we have that. And I'm going to, as I said, if you'll send me those last 3 pages separately,
yes,
I would like to post them. And I appreciate the work. This should go a long way to dispelling some of the suspicion that we have about who gets what at the campus level.
To address your question, we're looking at the campus allocations, and we're looking at some of the federal funds that we receive. And so we've got a lot of title and priority and focus funds. And the reason why that Dunbar is a little greater this year is because of the grant that we received for early college high school there. And so we've been very, very good to receive those funds to benefit that campus.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Robbins.
Thank you, President Ramos. Mrs. Shiro, thank you and your staff for the work that you've done, and I appreciate your conservatism. I'm, in this particular case, very supportive of the additions that we've made at the very last minute, particularly with regard to the substitutes and for the health care of our employees. And I thank you for keeping the spotlight on substitutes. You know, if you get right down to it, if we have a class with no teacher, we can't have that. And so an investment of this sort is just most needed. It's a requirement, in my opinion. The only constituent input I've gotten on the budget has been about health costs, and you give us a raise and then you take it all back by the health cost increase. So I do think that's very important as well, and I appreciate that being included. That being said, in addition to maybe reducing programs and so on, I think we need to focus on efficiencies in our business operations and make sure that we're as efficient as we can possibly be in all of those processes that we have. I do not foresee getting big influxes of money from the state or anywhere else. I think if we're going to improve our situation, we're going to have to do it ourselves. So I'm very, very much interested in trying to find efficiencies that would help us do that. And I only think we have a few years before we can't keep operating with the same revenue, forever. So eventually, at some point, we're going to have to try to seek a tax increase. And at that point, we need to have proven to the taxpayers that we are the most efficiently run school district that we can be. And in order to do that, I think we need to take some steps over the next 2 or 3 years that will prove to the taxpayers that we are being efficient and that we're doing the best we can. I would not expect us to approach the taxpayers until we have just exhausted all other possibilities. So we very much appreciate your conservatism in your budgeting practices. So I'm appreciative of what you've done this year. I thank you for that. I do think we have a lot of work to do in the next few years. If we can get a balanced budget in the next 2 or 3 years, that'd be a wonderful thing because we've operated at a deficit for many, many years. So we look forward to working with you to figure out how to best do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Toby Jackson.
Ramos, Elsie, thank you. Ms. Shiro, I'm sorry. Thank you and your staff. A couple of things. One, we've talked about the programs of choice. I am a fan of every one of the programs of choice, but if we have some that are not operating with efficiency, to Mr. Robbins' comment, we need to look at selective abandonment. Not only are they a cost in a building, a room, a teacher, there's also the transportation cost. And I know I have a couple of schools we've had a hard time filling, especially engineering spots. So that's something I'd like for the board to look at, and I'd like for us to consider having a team of people look at. And I think it's a serious amount of money, and it also isn't allowing us to focus our money where we need to on students and driving change down the road. Instead, we're spread out everywhere. And I know the superintendent's talked about that. We have too many programs, but that's where I'd like to see us focus.
Well, thank you. We actually had a conversation to that extent this very day going forward. So thank you for those comments.
I got your rooms bugged.
Dr. Sims.
Thank you. I'd like to express my appreciation to you and your staff. And I had mentioned to Dr. Scribner that we may need to reassess some of our staff where we have them, because I'm really concerned about the money that we have in our campus. I believe we may need some additions there because it's imperative that we get those schools up to par. And I think Dr. Scribner's going to get back with me on some of the suggestions that I made to him. Okay. And rather than adding to the budget, we can redirect some of our personnel and staff in order to get other help in these schools. So I appreciate what you've done. I support it, and I think we'll be able to do a good job with the redirection of some of our staff.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sharo. Thank you and your team.
Thank you, sir.
Looks like we have no more questions or comments from the board. We'll move on to action agenda items. First up will be 18A, which will be to consider and take possible action to non-renew Chapter 21 contracts, considering the reduction in force due to program change. I believe Dr. Sutherland has a motion.
I move to approve You'll probably hear me anyway. I move to approve the non-renewal of employment contracts as discussed in executive session pursuant to Chapter 21 of the Texas Education Code.
So motion by Dr. Sutherland, a second by Dr. Avila. Any discussion? No discussion. Please move to vote. Motion passes 7-4 and 0 against. 18B, consider and take possible action to terminate term contracts during the term. Motion by Dr. Avila.
I move to approve the termination of the employment term contracts as discussed in executive session pursuant to Chapter 21 of the Texas Education Code.
So the motion is made by Dr. Avila and a second by Dr. Sims. Any discussion? No discussion. Please move to vote. Motion passes 7-4 and 0 against. 18C, approval of budget amendment for the general fund and food service for period ended May 31st, 2016. We have a motion by Dr. Sutherland and a second by Ms. Toby Jackson. Any discussion? No discussion. Please move to vote. Motion passes 7-4 and 0 against. 18D, approve agreement with Tarrant County for the collection of property taxes. Motion by Ms. Toby Jackson, a second by Dr. Sutherland. Any discussion? No discussion. Please move to vote. Motion passes 7-4 and 0 against. 18E, approval of campus turnaround plans. We have a motion by Ms. Toby Jackson, a second by Ms. Judy Needham. Discussion, Ms. Toby Jackson.
Thank you, President Ramos. I just want to thank the staff for their hard work on the turnaround plans. I'm highly optimistic that things are moving in the right direction. I also want to make sure we have stop gaps in place if things are not moving in the right direction, and we have regular reports to the board, hopefully on a monthly basis, of how we're progressing on those campuses. But again, I want to thank the team. You guys have done a great job. Thank you.
Dr. Avila.
Thank you. I just want to make a brief comment. You know, we do a lot of challenging work here on the board, and I know the staff do too. You know, one of the things that makes me the most uncomfortable is when we're talking about those improvement required campuses. It's at the heart of what we're supposed to be doing, and it's really important that we're successful in getting all of those campuses off of that list and having a school district that does not have any improvement required campuses. Thank you.
Please move to vote. Motion passes 7-4 and 0 against. 18F, approval to increase the cost of moving services in 2013 capital improvement program. We have a motion by Mrs. Toby Jackson, a second by Ms. Judy Needham. Any discussion? No discussion. Please move to vote. Motion passes 7-4 and 0 against. 19, comments or by board members or superintendent on current district activities and announcements. Do we have any comments? Dr. Sutherland?
It's probably not going to be very, very happily approved, but we've put a tremendous amount of effort into our transgender administrative regulations, mostly because of the question about bathroom utilization. And I finally thought to myself, I wonder how big this problem is. So I asked a staff member this afternoon or this evening how many people came to the central office asking for this right, and the answer was none. And I said, well, how about principals? Did any principals come and ask? And the answer was again, none. So we are losing an uncommon amount of public confidence, and God knows how much time, staff time, on a problem which to this point does not exist.
Looks like we have no other comments. This meeting is adjourned.